Hey y'all, this is Amanda coming at you before the episode starts. Couple of things. One, this episode does include some discussion of some pretty significant themes, such as rape and suicide. So we wanted to offer any of you who are not interested in hearing about that an opportunity to skip this episode. Also, there was another incident of some microphone issues. I will be purchasing another microphone shortly. I edited out as much as I could, but please forgive us for that little bit of staticky crackleness that occurs in the middle. I promise it clears up within just a couple of minutes. A young man lay down to sleep and awoke in the middle of the night screaming. He told his parents that a terrible spirit had come for him in the night. It wanted to kill him, and if he fell asleep again, it would finally be able to. That night, he did not sleep again. His parents talked to him and did their best to soothe him. They explained that it was only a dream, a very bad dream, but that dreams could not harm him. When he finally fell asleep again the following night, his parents were relieved. They believed the crisis was over. Then, sometime in the deep hours of dark, they heard him scream out in absolute terror. By the time they got to him, he was already dead. He died in the middle of a nightmare. There is a medicine story that tells of Crow's fascination with her own shadow. She kept looking at it, pecking at it until her shadow woke up and became alive. Then Crow's shadow ate her. Crow is dead Crow now. Join us as we attempt to look through the wandering crow's eye to find the gateway to the supernatural, to seek to know the unknowable mysteries of creation. Welcome to the Wandering Crow podcast. Hey everybody, it's Mandy. I'm back with you with Cameron.
Hello, how's everyone doing?
And so if you didn't recognize our intro story, that actually really happened. That really happened, and that was the inspiration for Wes Craven's Nightmare on Elm Street. So we wanted to talk a little bit today about that whole situation, which happened in the 70s and 80s. And following that, Cameron and I will have a little bit of a debate about sleep demon versus vampire. And then you guys get to decide. What do you think, Cameron? Anything else you want to add to that?
I just want to add that I am correct and you are wrong.
I actually, you know what's funny is remember we were talking and I was telling you I couldn't find any witness accounts. I found a couple witness accounts, and unfortunately, I think they prove you right.
Told you.
It's like, God damn it. But they're the only ones I could find, and they're really good, so I'm going to read them, and then you're going to end up being right. But, so... All right. So, as always, we'll do some disclaimers. Number one, our bias is that the spirits are real and that they often exist across cultures under a variety of names. Cameron, you want to do number two?
Yeah, I just want to point out we are not paranormal experts. We're just hobbyists. We're just doing this for fun. We don't know professionally these things. We were just investigating it, just telling everybody what we think, and leaving it up to you to decide.
Disclaimer number three. I personally do believe that spirits can cause illnesses. However, that does not mean that you should not go to a medical doctor to get evaluated. I believe that spirits can cause illness, but there are still diseases that require modern Western treatment, as well as spiritual treatment. So the disclaimer is, even though you may think that your illness is spiritual in origin, your illness is still physically present. It's still affecting you and requires physical treatment, as well as spiritual treatment. That's all I've got for three. Cameron?
And while that one is very important, let's also not forget that just because we're talking about vampires, we believe that they might be real. Don't go out to graveyards. Don't go hunting vampires. And don't go stabbing people you think might be vampires. This is just supposed to be a good time on the internet, just a storytelling.
Did you hear that story? I saw it when we were doing the Hat Man. Some girls thought, oh, I need to look it up, but it seemed like some girls thought that they were killing the Slender Man or something, or that the Slender Man...
That's a pretty famous story online.
Oh, I had never seen it before.
Yeah, two girls and their friend went out to the woods because I think as far as the one girl was concerned, they were just hanging out. And the two girls had premeditated this. They were going to go out there and they were going to stab their friend to try to appease Slender Man so that they could live with him.
Oh, no. That's terrible. Yeah, please don't do that. We're not encouraging that. Don't stab people. You get stabby, you go to jail if you're lucky. So, okay. I think that does it for the disclaimers.
Important too, though. That girl survived. I don't know if she caught that.
I didn't.
She got stabbed like several times, and she crawled her way to a freeway and was able to get help. I'm pretty 90% sure she lived.
Aw, how old was she?
I think they were like 15.
Oh, can you imagine how that must screw with your world? Like, how do you trust people again? People that you thought were your friends. God, good for her for surviving.
They were her best friends, yeah. Ugh. I mean, what do you do?
What do you do? That's why girls suck sometimes, man. I mean, I guess boys do that. I've heard stories of boys doing that kind of thing too, though. So I guess people just suck. Gender non-specific. So, okay, let's get into it. All right, in the research of doing Hatman, discovered that Freddy...
She did live. I just looked it up. She is alive.
Aw. How old
she survived.
How long ago was that? How old is she?
She was 12.
She was just a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God. That's so sad. Man, people suck. All right. Well, getting into the episode, while we were researching Hatman and the Bon Samedi, I discovered that, well, no, I didn't actually. I heard it from a podcast called The Belief Hole, who I just absolutely love them, and I will probably talk about them a lot. But they kind of had mentioned this Hatman phenomena and Freddy Krueger, and how Freddy Krueger was actually based on a series of deaths that occurred in California in the 70s and the 80s. And I was very intrigued by that. So I looked it up and I found a bunch of different medical articles, really detailed medical studies, because after the first 10 deaths occurred, some very smart doctor caught on to the pattern and said, holy crap, something's happening here. We need to send this to the CDC to see if there's some kind of communicable disease, like what's happening with these men. And so there were a series of epidemiological studies, and they are very detailed, and they went through quite a few different possible causes, and they were not able to find any specific cause. And that was in the 80s, okay? So we're talking about 40 years later, we still don't have a very clear answer for what caused these deaths. And I had the idea, well, kind of to me, it obviously sounds spiritual, and the medical establishment's not going to ask these people about their spiritual beliefs, or if they're having hallucinations, if they feel like they're being visited. They're not going to care about details like that, because to the medical community, that's all nonsense. That has nothing to do with it, right? But I was curious, and I did find this really fascinating article from one lonely anthropologist who wrote their paper in 1995. And she went through and started interviewing the Hmong people themselves to see what their thoughts were on what had occurred in the 70s and 80s, and what they thought it's called SUNDS, S-U-N-D-S, what these SUNDS deaths were about. So, first thing you need to know is the Hmong people, it's H-M-O-N-G. These are a population of Southeast Asian people. And in the 70s, the Hmong people were actually funded by our CIA to help us fight the Vietnam War. And after the Vietnam War was over and we officially retreated, and because we lost, we helped get these people out of Laos so that they wouldn't face repercussions from the Vietnamese people that they had been fighting against. So they spent a little bit of time in some other countries, and then eventually they were able to be brought over to the United States. And that was in about 1975. So not too terribly long later, in 1977, the very first death occurred. And so the way that it would go, you had these otherwise healthy men who would go to sleep one night and they would not wake up. And after the first about 10 of these deaths, as I said before, someone caught on to the pattern and sent it to the CDC for investigation. So there were some studies done and there were some autopsies done, and the best that they could find were some of those gentlemen, and it was almost exclusively men. There were 118 deaths in total. Only one of them was female. But they did find in a few of the men some excess or some kind of abnormalities in the circuitry of their hearts that they thought maybe contributed, but they couldn't figure out what the trigger was. And to this day, Sund's death, SUND, so it means sudden unexplained nocturnal death syndrome. And so they still don't know what the triggers are. They've done some genetic studies and have isolated some 80 genes that they think may contribute to it. They suspect that sleep apnea might have something to do with it. They maybe stress. They think maybe stress, the diet perhaps. There is some speculation about super starchy foods before bed, maybe is speculated to contribute. And then, of course, there's the sleep paralysis itself that could be a part of it as well. But they can't quite find the trigger. Now, over the years, they've made the criteria for what qualifies as Sund's deaths more strict. So they used to allow a lot more things to fall under the diagnosis of Sund's, but they've since had some discoveries where they were able to pinpoint some specific abnormalities or congenital defects of the bodies, which were the trigger in certain deaths. So even after making the criteria a lot more strict, there are still a percentage of deaths which are completely unexplained and are just a complete mystery. And when they were doing their epidemiology studies, the CDC emphasized a need to observe closely those people who fit the demographic characteristics, i.e., they're Southeast Asians, and who have a transient nocturnal events, which include a sense of panic or extreme fear, paralysis, either partial or complete, a sense of pressure on the chest, a sense of an intruder in the room, either animal, human, or spirit, and a disturbance of sensation, either auditory, visual, or tactile hallucination. These 5 symptoms that the CDC said are the ones that need to be studied are also the ones that are highly characteristic of the quote-unquote nightmare experience, which is known and described among countless folk traditions around the world. So there were quite a few things that were really interesting about the studies. The most interesting kind of blew my mind, but we may need to do a little bit of review of some math terms. In math, when we're doing statistics and reviewing groups of data, we all know what an average is, probably, right? We know what a median or a peak is, but there's this other thing called a mode, M-O-D-E. And I couldn't quite remember what it was, so I had to go look it up. So let's say that you have a set of 10 numbers. The mode is the number that occurs most often in that group. In these studies that they did, the Sund's death occurred around the world where Hmong people live. So the Philippines, Japan, Thailand, China, and even still some in Vietnam. When they were looking at one of these studies in particular, they found that the mode of the time of death was 3 a.m. And for... Cameron's making faces. I can't hear you.
3 a.m., huh? You don't say. So we did have this conversation a little bit earlier because she wanted us to start from the same jumping point. And I pointed out, no way, that's when I wake up every night.
Do you see sleep demons when you wake up? Well, you do see shadow people.
I used to have night terrors, but now, so like I wore one of those heart monitor watches.
Oh, you
They can actually measure your heart rate and all that.
Yeah.
Right around 3 a.m., I have a massive spike to like 180, 189, 193, right around 3 or 2:30, leading up to 3. And then I kind of wake up, and lately, no sleep demons, no sleep paralysis, nothing. I just sort of wake up. I'm like annoyed because it feels like I woke up from a nap.
Right. That sucks. Well, for those of you in the audience who don't know the significance of 3 a.m., there is an occult significance to 3 a.m. That is the witching hour. that is the time when the veil is thinnest and creatures from the other side find it much easier to come over to our side. At least that's my understanding of 3 a.m. What's your understanding of 3 a.m.?
The veil thins, and this is the time that entities find it easier to pass into our world and communicate with those that are from our realm, so us. That's the time that you are closest to the spirits, and so that is the witching hour. It is also said that sometimes that hour can be its own sort of separate bubble in time. So, like, you can have experiences that don't correlate with time normally.
Oh, so you can have like a 2-hour-long experience and it still only be like 3:15? Is that what you mean?
Something like that, yeah. By the time you look at your watch, all of a sudden, oh shit, it's only been 15 minutes.
Yeah. That's crazy. I had not heard about that time thing. That's interesting. Like time slip type situation. Huh. Okay. Well, moving along. I was very curious about this and I thought, okay, this is all very interesting scientifically, but obviously science is not going to give a crap about the subjective experiences of these people. They are totally going to say and dismiss any spiritual trigger. And my personal stance is you have physical illness that requires physical treatment. That's like a no-brainer for me. Duh, obviously. But what triggers the physical illness? Sometimes it's very obvious. I have a heart attack because I've been eating, tacos and hamburgers and high-fat milkshakes my whole life. I clogged my arteries. I had a heart attack. I am the trigger. Sometimes they're very, very obvious, and it's obviously me, and it has nothing to do with, well, even in that case, there may be a spiritual significance to it. Why am I abusing my body so badly? Maybe there's something there. But for the most part, that's a physical deal, right? But in this case, they couldn't find the trigger. They understood mechanically why these men were, like, how, not why, but how these men were dying, but not why. What was it that was triggering them to die at 3 a.m? And some of them would have loved ones who would hear them screaming, who would hear them gurgling and having strange breathing patterns and would try to come in and get them, but it would already be too late. So this lady, her name was Shelley R. Adler, and I think she's a doctorate, but I don't see it in here. She was an anthropologist. She worked for the Division of Medical Anthropology and Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics in the University of California, San Francisco. And in 1995, she wrote this paper, and she went and she interviewed 118 Hmong people. And when the Hmong people first came to the U.S., they had this crazy disruption of their normal social, cultural lives. They no longer were living in these tight villages with lots of social supports. They no longer had their shamans with them to help them do their regular traditional ceremonies. They felt that by flying across the ocean, their ancestors would not be able to come with them and that they were going to be in a lot of trouble. But they also felt, well, if the ancestors can't come with us, then probably these bad spirits won't be able to follow us either. So maybe it'll be okay. Maybe we'll be fine. So a lot of them came to the U.S. They came without these supports, and they felt like they'd be okay. But within about 17 months, these deaths started occurring. So what they felt when they were talking to her in their interviews was that it was this traditional sleep demon. They specifically named it. And it's called, the spelling is Dab Tsog, but that's not how it's pronounced. It's D-A-B, first word. Second word is T-S-O-G. And according to the paper, it's pronounced Dacho. And the Dacho is this terrifying demon that presses on them. And they say it's like Tsuam is how they would say it. It's like this pressing demon. So there's different types of Cho demons. And this particular one is Dacho. And what they felt was happening was these men were coming to the United States. They weren't doing the normal annual feeding of the ancestors. So there were these traditions where they would have to annually feed and charge the ancestor spirits, and the ancestor spirits would protect them from this demon. But they were not able to do that because they didn't have access to their ancestors. They didn't have access to the shamans. And there was, from a lot of them, she posits in her paper that there was a lot of pressure to convert to Christianity. And so some of them felt pressure to convert to Christianity, and some of them left behind the old ways, because that's obviously, in some Christian circles, not all, that is considered a kind of demon worship. You don't do that. You just pray to God, and that's what you need to do. So here is one story from a man that she interviewed. He said, "First I was surprised, but right away I got real scared. I was lying in bed. I was so tired because I was working very hard then. I wanted to go to school, but I had no money. I kept waking up because I was thinking so much about my problems. I heard a noise, but when I tried, I could not move. My bedroom looked the same, but I could see in the corner a dark shape was coming to me. It came to the bed, over my feet, my legs. It was very heavy, like a heavy weight over my whole body, my legs, my chest. My chest was frozen like I was drowning. I had no air. I tried to yell so someone sleeping very close to me will hear. I tried to move, using a force that I can, a strength that I can have. I thought, what if I die? After a long time, it went away. It just left. I got up and turned all the lights on. I was afraid to sleep again." So, one of the things I had mentioned was that the majority, 100 and some of the accounts are different. I had seen 117 people died in some places, and I saw 118 in others. But the fact remains, all except one of those were male, and they were young men. They were men between the ages of 25 and 42. And the average age, 44, and the average age was about 33. And when she talked to these men, they said, well, in traditional teachings, the dacho comes after the head of the household. And that's usually, the father. That's usually the man. And in the instance where, in the one case that it was a woman, they said, we think probably, if we had to guess, because they didn't exactly know, she was probably either a widow or, what did they say? Or she was unmarried, and so therefore was the last member of her household. Because they do say the dacho will come to other members of the family, but it's the father who pays the ultimate price. And there were some examples of wives seeing these things too. So I really loved this paper. It was very, very good. And as far as I can tell, she's the only one who really took the time to get into it and look for this. So I think sleep demon, because the Hmong people themselves said sleep demon. And what's interesting to me was I had a very hard time finding... when I was looking for the dacho, I was looking for actual accounts from actual Hmong people, because it's their cultural demon. I wanted them to be the ones to say, yeah, that was definitely a dacho. But I did find a lot of reports of American people, and I didn't know, their culture. But just labeling their sleep demon a dacho, or saying in the translation that was getting used was nag hag. I saw nag hag and I saw night hag. And they were claiming it was this thing, and I just was really annoyed by some of the accounts, because I just couldn't be sure. I wanted specifically the real dacho, but I just couldn't know for sure if people were just calling it dacho because they'd heard the term and they were mislabeling this visitation, or if they truly were, I guess, from a place where they could know one way or the other. And that kind of led me to looking at lots of other kinds of sleep demons and sleep paralysis and the Reddit threads. And what's interesting, there is a website called the Sleep Foundation, and they use the term sleep demon and sleep paralysis interchangeably. And so does the culture on Reddit as well. When I was looking for accounts of people being visited by the dacho, people were calling sleep paralysis, even if it had an entity or not, just calling it sleep demon. And it's become, I find that it kind of blows my mind a little bit, but it's considered this interchangeable thing, these interchangeable terms. Being visited by a sleep demon also means you had sleep paralysis. But no one actually believes, at least in the medical community, that the demon itself is real. They think that the demon is just this hallucination. But, around the world, sleep demons are known from all cultures, and they have different names, and they have some different ways of being, but there is kind of this overarching theme. The person is asleep, they're laying on their back. They kind of wake up a little bit. They maybe realize that they can move. Maybe they don't. Maybe they wake up because they heard a noise. In one of my accounts, the lady said she would hear a whistling noise before each attack. They see something at the end of the bed or the corner of the room. It crawls on top of them and it sits on their chest. And it keeps them from breathing. And they panic because they can't move and they can't push it off. And that is a very typical, across cultures, depiction of this sleep demon. It's so typical that the most famous painting, there is actually a painting which describes, where is it? Oh, it's a 1781 painting. It's called The Nightmare by a Swiss artist by the name of Henry Fuseli. But the picture is a lady who's in a swoon. She's sprawled across her bed, laying limp, and an incubus is squatting on her stomach. And they say the word incubus, but it looks like a little, I don't know, troll or gnome or something. Goblin. It looks like a goblin, this picture, and it's everywhere. And even the medical community has kind of adopted this image as like the symbol of sleep paralysis, which I think is just so interesting. And it's been around forever. But there's many different kinds of sleep demons. So in this article, they describe it as an incubus. But I think even in our current culture, we have a pretty clear understanding that an incubus is actually a creature that is having sexual relations, consensual or otherwise, I don't know, but some people say non-consensual, with the sleeper. And the succubus is the female version of that. It's a demon that is taking advantage of you in your sleep. I did see several accounts from women and men of these creatures today who said that they're being visited by these creatures and they're being sexually assaulted in their sleep, and they're traumatized, like genuinely seem just terrified and traumatized by these things that are going on in their sleep. I wanted to get more time into the different kinds of sleep demons, what they are, their names, where they come from, but unfortunately I ran out of time in the research phase. But I do have a couple of witness accounts from Hmong people themselves that I thought were just so interesting, and I wanted to read them, and they're a little bit long. This first one is called Raug Tsuam, and I probably pronounced that wrong, but it means being caused sleep paralysis. So like not I have been caused, but like a being, like an entity caused sleep paralysis by a sleep paralysis causing Cho spirit. So there is a YouTube channel called Simply Hmong, and the girl, or it might be a man, but the narrator is a lady. She has these stories that come to her from Hmong people, and she reads them on her YouTube channel. And there's a couple of folks, a gentleman by the name of Michael Johnson, who will annotate, like he'll transcribe these videos, and then another guy named David Strecker who will translate them. The translations are a little bit rough, but I have two different stories I wanted to read. So this story is about a lady, and it goes over the span of several years. She says, "My life began in Vinay village, Ban Vinay refugee camp. I don't know if it was when we were still in Vinay that I bumped into something, or exactly where it happened to me. But after I was married, I would sometimes have sleep paralysis with a sleep demon. I would sleep, and it would be like being in a trance, but I would feel it causing me sleep paralysis, almost massaging my arms and legs so that they were completely dead and unable to move. Eventually, we were able to relocate out of Vinay village to Fananikom. That's where I became pregnant with my first baby. At about 2 months or so, the baby miscarried. I did not get to have that baby. A long time passed, but no more babies came. At that same time, the sleep demon seemed to be coming more and more. I spoke about it and confided to my husband, but he would scold me, saying that I must really miss my old vegetables, my old boyfriends. That's the actual translation. I must really miss my old vegetables. I think it might be a sexual innuendo.
Chad move.
I don't. What did you say? A Chad move? I don't understand.
Very sensitive man. He's at one with his emotions.
Okay. Well,
but I don't know. I found it kind of funny, but go on.
It sounded like he's accusing her of missing other penises, like is what he's saying. He kept saying, he was scolding me, and he would say that I must really miss my old vegetables, my old boyfriends. That's literally the translation.
It's that, or he's calling the dead people vegetables.
Oh, but I don't think they died necessarily. Anyway, my husband, was lying right beside me on the bed, yet I had the indecency to have visions of having sex with my old boyfriends. He just kept scolding me like that. He wouldn't believe me. We didn't stay in Fananikom long. After we had finished studying English, we came here to America. When we arrived, we looked for some medicine, and I got pregnant again. The baby in my belly got bigger and bigger. At about 3 to 4 months, we had an appointment with the doctor. Everything was okay. Then one day I went to work and then felt a very, very severe pain in my belly. The place where I worked called an ambulance for me, and it transported me to the hospital. When I arrived there, the doctors told me that my baby had died. They gave me medicine to eat, and I think it made the baby fall out. When the baby fell out, I wasn't certain if it was already dead or exactly when it had become lifeless. It was so small. The doctors took the baby away. I don't even know what they did to dispose of it. A fetus 3 months old is still very small and has only just begun to be formed. So as far as they were concerned, too bad. They just threw it away. After the second miscarriage, my husband began to go plow outside. And it's explained in the translation this means have sex with other women. I was
going to make the joke, but holy shit. What a dick.
He's a huge dick. What an asshole. She miscarries, and so he just decides he's going to go have sex with other people. I know.
Well, I guess my hands aren't tied anymore. Time to go off in the town.
Mm-hmm.
God damn.
I know. He's an asshole. So anyway, she said it was like he didn't think or care about my life, my feelings, and what I was going through. In 100 ways, he would scold and accuse me of still missing my old boyfriend of long ago. That I could not let him go. I had visions that a sleep paralysis-causing Tsog spirit, Cho spirit, came and caused me to have sleep paralysis. I was pregnant twice and miscarried both. He had no love for me at all. Whenever I confided in him, he would only scold. And I'm not the kind of person who likes to just go ahead and get married, but then be gay or take this one or take that one. I think she means have affairs. I went
go out and be happy, like the traditional translation of gay.
In the translation, the translator said it could be either. It actually both would be acceptable translations, but he felt in the context she actually meant like be homosexual. Like I'm not the kind of like she was basically saying I'm very traditional.
Was it a thought? Was that a thought in her mind?
I don't know. It seemed like she was saying I'm really traditional. Once I'm married, I'm married. I don't know if it was a thought or not. I'm just telling you what was in the translation. I don't know.
Well, a lot of these stories, these things will come on broken relationships. Like they will seed themselves when they have like a heart of displeasure, or they can see there's turmoil in a relationship if there's an atmosphere of trouble. So I'm wondering if it was just an unhappy relationship. Like maybe it did cross her mind. Maybe she did miss her ex-lovers.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's why he went off in the town and couldn't give a shit less about her. Maybe their relationship was already failing.
From the beginning, before.
And that's why this thing targeted her.
Mm-hmm. I wondered about that too. I have some thoughts about it later. Because she does make an effort to get rid of it. Several efforts, like a very concerted effort. And I do have some thoughts about that. So anyway, she finally went to her mother and father-in-law and asked them to, deal with your son, just talk to him and ask him if he even loves me, and ask him if he'd be willing to help me seek medical treatment or a shamanic healing. But she did not, at that time, tell them about the demon. she just basically asked them, tell him he's got to stop having these affairs, basically. She said, I also went and talked about it to my mom. My mom said, look, you've married into their family. It wouldn't be good if your father and I intervened. That's not our place now. And I think that that's a cultural thing. She married into their family. It's their family's issue. She said, it's not a good idea for us to get involved. We really shouldn't be the ones. It's not appropriate for us to reach out to the shaman. You're married. First, you speak to your husband, and he's going to understand. Then, talk to your in-laws. She says, but I had already told my husband. But Mom said, if you've not talked about these things to your mother and father-in-law, and your father and I get involved, it's going to cause a lot of trouble. It's going to offend your in-laws, and they're going to be really upset. It's going to cause a lot of difficulties. So after her mom told her that, she basically let it go, because she'd already been telling her husband about the demon, and he didn't believe her. After that...
It does sound like a breakdown there.
Yeah.
It sounds like it is culturally expected that this should be handled between them, and that she took the right steps, but that he wasn't listening.
Yeah.
That there was already this issue.
Yeah, she didn't feel supported by him. He was prepared to just say, this is your problem. It's not real. And in the meantime, this demon kept coming more and more. It would start causing sleep paralysis as soon as I climbed into bed. She said, I felt like I was in a trance, sleeping with my eyes shut. I would hear a whistling sound. Then I would realize what was going on, and I'd try to open my eyes to look, but I couldn't fully open my eyes. They were only open a little bit. I saw it standing at the foot of the bed like it was my husband. So there's kind of this mimic. She said it looked just like her husband. She said, I heard it climbing onto the bed and lying down with me. And she says that later you can tell that's a euphemism. It was having intercourse with her. When it caused me sleep paralysis, I could tell it wasn't my husband because I slept with my husband in the same bed. I knew his body. I knew his smell. The sleep paralysis demon, their body was stiffer and bigger than my husband's. And I'm not sure if that's a specific part of the anatomy or just in general. She said, moreover, its flesh, when it caused the sleep paralysis, would rub against me so that I felt really hot. She said, that's how I knew it wasn't actually my husband. It was this demon. There was a difference. I knew my husband's body and it wasn't the same. She said, after a while, I would remember to try and move. But my hands and my feet were completely paralyzed. She uses the word wiggle a lot. That's the translation. She says, I could not even wiggle. I could not cry out. Wriggle, 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 without escaping. I listen, and it's like when my husband is sleeping with me. When it had taken what it wanted, it would slip back from the end of the bed. I would then wake up covered with sweat. It was like this for a while. However much I spoke to my husband, he paid no attention. He said the same words as before, until I finally decided to tell my mother-in-law. So finally she gets the in-laws involved. And mother-in-law is like, oh my God. So mother-in-law gets right on it. She yells at her son, this lady's husband, and within 2 days, they've called for a shamanic ceremony. They got stuff going on. She said they did a diagnostic ceremony, not a healing one. And after the ceremony was finished, there was no difference in the demon. It gradually became more obtrusive. She said, before, I had a fear of the demon. No matter how tired I was, I didn't want to go to sleep. I just felt like if I closed my eyes, it would make that whistling sound and I would be in the trance. She said, thus, for many years afterward, my husband gradually drew apart from me and began to look for a place to live outside. And she talks about how he is actively talking with other women on the phone, and she could hear him having these phone conversations, and he was just kind of rude. And he would leave their bed for hours at a time to talk to these other women and would come back to bed. And he just basically, he didn't care. He didn't care what was going on with her. And it sounds like she tried to say, like, I'm here by myself and you're out there talking to these women. And this thing is here preying on me. And he didn't care. He just ignored her. So he's been talking to these women. And then she says, so then 1 year later, my husband ended up going to Laos. When he arrived there, he had already been talking to this young woman. He decided to marry her and paid money to her parents. So he stayed with them for about a month and then came back home. Not long after he came home, the young woman let him know that she was pregnant. He was extremely happy. He sent them a ton of money every month because he really believed that this was wonderful. Like, he was just in heaven. And he said in his whole being, he still thought that the reason I didn't have children was not because of him, it was because of me. So no matter how much money he earned, he would gather up most of it and he'd send it to Laos with his second wife and child. After 9 months, the junior wife in Laos gave birth to a child. My husband was even happier, and he engaged in insulting me even more. She says he gave 100 kinds of insults all at once. He said, "You see?" He had taken a junior wife, and the junior wife had already given birth to a child. How many I had, they had miscarried. The problems were not because of him, they were because of me. I had a spirit accompanying me, and that was why. But the truth was that we didn't know how the sleep paralysis demon actually started. She says it was my husband's fault that we were like this. What is truly important is that two people be of one heart and mind and seek medical treatment and shamanic healing together. But he paid no attention. He had to be forced to go to that shamanic healing, and it sounds a little bit like he didn't actually do the healing part. Yeah, they just did the diagnostic, and he didn't actually do any of the healing ceremonies.
Which was the seat of the problem in the first place.
Yep.
That's probably what drew it there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's exactly my thinking.
So she would try to tell him, and he paid no. He was just happy. He had his wife, he had his kid, and he was happy. He didn't give a crap about her. She thought about divorcing him, but she felt like she was kind of stuck. She hadn't been very wise with her own money. She had been working, but she wasn't saving, is what it sounds like. She hadn't saved a lot of money, and there was a lot of social stigma. If she left her husband and went back to live with her parents, she felt like she was going to just end up dying, and her parents would end up burying her. Let's see. Eventually, some elders came and talked to her, were like, you shouldn't care about being beautiful. I don't know what that means exactly in terms of the translation. They said perhaps it was insanity or punishment to chase my husband. Only 2 years after the woman gave birth to the child, he filed documents to bring her over. But when he did that, the woman decided to run off and chase young men, and she went to remarry a new husband. She abandoned the child and left the child with her parents. No one saw her or knew where she was after that. The child was in extremely bad circumstances, but I wasn't there. I didn't actually see it. I don't know if they just said that because they wanted us to keep sending money, or if the child really was in bad circumstances. Because he didn't have a mom. But my husband became really sick at heart. He hired a lawyer, and the lawyer helped him with some of the documentation, and he ended up losing a ton of money. Like, they took a huge financial hit, and eventually they were just waiting at that point for the child to come live with them. So at that time, he's heartbroken. The dream of his junior wife, she says, was like a little egg which fell and broke with a sound on the ground. She says plodge. The plodge sound on the ground. Its shell completely shattered. The yolk oozed out and could not be repaired. He therefore recanted his thoughts. Suddenly, I was pretty cool again, and he decided he was going to come back to me. He pretended to be interested in my day and would ask me all kinds of questions and say really complimentary things. He would tell me that he'd come to love me again, but by then it was too late. My heart was already broken. I just couldn't believe that he was genuine. So I just didn't pay any attention to him. Actually, there was a part in here, and I forgot to... This is actually pretty important. There we go. This was before he actually went to Laos to find the young woman, but she's dealing with her husband cheating on her with all these young women. She describes, there was a time for many nights when I would lie alone, and he would talk and talk on the phone, and he would fall asleep on the sofa without coming to bed. She says, I then had the will, and I would actually call to the demon. I would bring it to me. I didn't fear it anymore. It was as if, when I was lonely, it would untie my sorrow and loneliness. I would then come to have a bright heart. So there came a point in this tumultuous relationship with her husband where she actually wanted the encounters with the demon and felt comforted by those encounters, which I thought was really interesting. That was before he married the young woman in Laos. So we're going back. So he's decided he wants her back, and she's kind of over it. She's like, whatever, it's all done. But because he had had this change of heart and he decided he wanted to love her again, he suddenly felt concerned about what she'd been describing all those years. He suddenly felt like, maybe I should be paying attention and see if something's going on. So he started to watch her when she was sleeping, and he realized it was real. And he told her that there were nights where he heard the whistling. It wasn't just her, but he also heard it because he was finally paying attention and he realized it was really there. She says, he began to be sick at heart. And I took that to mean both an emotional sickness as well as a physical sickness. We went to seek a shamanic diagnosis. At that time, the elders felt and said it was appropriate for us to seek medical treatment, but he refused. She says, by now it's been going on for years. The demon had gotten used to my body and gotten used to my soul. She says, I did 9 shamanic spirit ceremonies and 10 fortune-telling spirit ceremonies, but there was no comfort and no help. Through all of this, I made my husband a non-believer. And At this time, he decided to lead the two of us to also believe in Christian God. Because he had some friends who had said, this is what you need to do, and only God's power can get rid of, it's called the Hmong Da, which is the devil. So then we decided to discard the old and we went to church. Through this, they tell them what's going on. There's this prayer group that's praying for them for several months. And after 2 months of prayers, they were finally able to sleep without being visited by this demon. And that went on for a couple of weeks. But then the demon would come back. She says, the two of us strenuously knelt to God with them in church on Sundays as well. But it was like the spirit could not be driven from me. She said eventually, even though they had that little break, however much we prayed to heaven, when this spirit wanted to move close to me, then it just would. It would get dark, I would fall asleep, my eyes would shut, and they would be there with the whistling sound. And so they tried. And there was a lot of effort on the part of this church group to help her with her prayers, help her with specific songs, to help her to get rid of this thing, and it just wouldn't go away. And she said, my husband acknowledged that there were some nights and sometimes, So she says, now we're in the present day. And right now, I don't really know what the future holds. There's only one thing left that I haven't tried yet. And that's to go meet with a psychologist and have my brain looked at and tell me if I'm crazy or not. She says, I thought about it and I looked into my own heart and I know that I'm not crazy. So I'm not going to do that. My husband himself has said that there are nights when he feels like he's in a trance and he can hear the whistling sound that comes to our bed. And I feel like that's enough confirmation for me to know that I'm not imagining this. She goes, I don't know where it's going to end. I've done 100 kinds of things to the Lord's power and at his breast. Whether there will be a day when I will be released or not remains to be seen. And she kind of goes on. She goes, I didn't tell this story to make my husband look bad. I don't hate men. I'm not trying to make myself look good, which I think in her way is kind of, she does feel a little bit of responsibility, even though it wasn't said in the story. And she says, I wish, this is for you as a kind of warning. And I hope that the Lord of heaven will bestow good fortune on you. And that's the end of this story. So, it's just, to me, man, and it went on for years. What do you think about that?
Kind of goes back to what I was saying, and it does kind of sound like an Incubus type of situation. Mm-hmm. I've read about those. Initially, they'll implore their victims, like I modern slang, fuckboy. They beg, they plead, they try to persuade you to have a relationship with them. They'll point out the shortcomings of the relationship you're currently in. They're drawn to negative atmospheres, and they'll only actually act once you agree to it. So whatever issues they were having, I think she succumbed to it. And I think there is a stigma in their culture about that same type of thing, which might be why he put it off in the first place.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, because it seemed, and I feel like there was an element of ambiguity in her and her feelings about it. From my training in the shamanic world, the only way a healing will work or getting rid of, an attachment will work is if the person that the thing is attached to is fully participating and fully putting up that boundary. Like, no, you have to go. Because on some level, it does have to be invited. A shamanic healing will never work. You can maybe for a little while get something to go away, but if that person isn't fully committed to keeping it away, it will come back.
Even if in some strange way they kind of miss it, that is an invitation.
Yep.
That brings it back.
Yeah. And so I did wonder about that. She did 9 healings, 10 fortune tellings, and months and months of praying with a Christian group to the Christian God. And none of it worked. And it just made me feel like, on some level, she wants this thing. And I feel like that was a little bit shown when she turned to it when her husband moved on from her. She found comfort in it. That was a little bit surprising to me. So I have one more story. This one is, and I'm going to go back in the editing and I'm going to put a trigger warning because I feel like, sexual assault probably needs to be trigger warned. This one, I'm not going to say the age, but this one involves a very young girl and it also involves suicide. This is the same YouTube channel. It's the same guy who's doing the transcription and the same guy who's doing the translation. And the story starts like this. My name is Toon. And I don't know if I'm saying that right. Toon. I still remember a time in my life when we were still in the Bon Vinai refugee camp in Thailand. In the years 1983 to 1984, we were in Area 2, and that's, I guess, part of the refugee camp. And we're going to Panspa. I don't know where that is. At that time, I was talking with a young woman who lived in Area 4 in a stone house, which was attached to a group of wooden houses. Near the well, the young woman, Ep2, who I went every evening to talk with, lived in a stone house. The two of us talked for 2 years. After 2 years, a new Hmong family came from Laos. This was the year 1986. They went to stay with some of their close kinsmen in a wooden home, and there were many of them sleeping in this earthen house where they would cook their food. This Hmong family who had just fled were newly living there, and they had 2 very beautiful and attractive daughters. The older one was grown. The younger one was just entering... God, I didn't want to mention her name. The young one was just entering puberty. And for the record, I think they're all teenagers. I'm pretty sure all 3 of the people involved in this story are teenagers at this time. But the younger one was just entering puberty. He goes, in this story, I will not say her name because I'm cursed. I have a cursed sickness. So I'm not allowed to say her name. It's just not good for me to say her name at all. He says, at this time, I had my girlfriend, Ep2, and the 2 of us talked with each other very well. I came every evening from talking with my girlfriend, Ep2, and then I would go straight to the new girl's family's house as well. And every time I came, I would talk to this new Hmong girl for about 30 minutes or so. After that, I would go and talk with my girlfriend, Ep2. So he was, juggling these 2 girls. The new girl, he talked to her for about 3 or 4 months. We were extremely close, and she loved me very much. And I kept asking her when we'd finally be able to have sex. So he was like, and eventually she gave in. So he'd sneak over to her, talk to her first, and then he'd go hang out with his other girlfriend. And he said, I felt like a person with 2 hearts. I loved my girlfriend. I wanted to keep seeing her. And I thought that I would just go and talk with the new Hmong girl. But, he says, tell her jokingly that I was an old man, but then I would get rub cheeks with her, is the idiom that they use. And I'm guessing that means we'd have sex. He says, truly speaking, if I wanted to choose one of them to be a wife, then I was really only interested in Ep2. So he was just using this girl. Like, he admits, I wasn't really interested in her in that way. But I did feel like I had love for this other girl as well. He said, I had really strong feelings for her and I wanted to meet with her because she said she had never had another boyfriend. And she was very attractive. And she loved me very much. So I would go and I would talk to her. He says, one evening, oh gosh, he talks a lot about how he goes back and forth. One evening, he was on his way to see the girlfriend Ep2's house, and this other girl called out his name and said, hey, why have you not come here? Why haven't you been here? He says, I stood up straight, and I just felt completely undone. I then lied to her and said, no, I've got some work to do. I'm going to go to my older brother's house and I'll come back and we'll talk later. He said at this time, the girl went away back to her family's house and she ran over to me and she took a hold of my shirt. She then said, I haven't had my period for 2 months. She says, what do you say about that? He says, at this time, it made me completely dazed. And I thought, oh my God, I'm dead. If my girlfriend Ep2 hears about this, she'll be so mad at me. And I was not pleased that this girl wanted me to marry her. So I tried to coax her and said, look, don't be in a hurry. You don't know if anything's really happening, And we don't want to become the laughingstock. We don't want to be ashamed of our actions. So let's not say anything for a while. Just be patient. Let's wait another couple of months and let's see if this is really happening. He says, if you're overeager, he says, I'll marry you, but I'm not actually going to love you. And when I said this, she released released her hand from my shirt. And she says, I know that you're just lying to me. You have your very good girlfriend already. You every evening come to be with me like this, and then you lie to me and deceive me and use my body only. You're already hurrying to go be with her. Isn't that true? I've already snuck after you and seen, and I know everything. When she spoke like this, it was like she knew me too well. I became a mute person and shivered. I was like an old man who's dead and extremely ashamed as well. I lied to her some more and said, hey, don't be in a hurry. Don't be hot-hearted. I'm going to go over to my older brother's family, and then I'll come back and we'll talk. She said, don't tell me more lies. I'll wait for you. If you won't come to meet me, I'll go meet you. And then I said, yes, that's fine. But my heart and my body were already with my girlfriend. So he bailed on her. He flaked out. He didn't come see her for a while. He felt like she was just trying to manipulate him into marrying her. So he stopped even going by that house altogether. And he wasn't even, and his thing is, I don't even know if she's really pregnant. She could just be trying to scare me so that I'm going to marry her. I didn't really know for sure. So I said goodbye and did not go to talk with her anymore. Then, 3 weeks after that, I heard that this girl had taken poison and died. It made me very scared. He says, I didn't know if it was because of me or what it was because of. What a dumbass. He absolutely knows it was about him. It made me very frightened.
Scared is a weird choice of words, too. Scared? Not sad?
Yeah, that's true. He didn't give a crap that she died. He was just scared for himself. He's kind of a selfish asshole. It made me very frightened. He said, it was not that I was afraid that she might go ahead and become a spirit to frighten me, but I was afraid that since she had died like this, my family would come looking for me to catch me and punish me. So at the time when the new girl took this poison and died, I hid for about a week. So about 4 or 5 months later, he was out and he was trapping quail with some friends. And they ended up in this area that was next to, unfortunately, next to the funeral. The graveyard. Oh gosh, he says there were still many Hmong graves up there. In the year of 1983, the Thai officials hired people to bring bulldozers and dig up the graves and move them. But they didn't move all of them. So on the big road, there were still many Hmong graves up there in Area 2 and Area 3. So when the Hmong had someone die, they would still carry them up and bury them up on that far road. And I didn't know where exactly they had buried that girl. That day, when I was out there, I needed to go pee. He says, when I finished peeing, I bent over for a moment to look at where I peed and how in that spot there was a fresh drop of blood. He says, I didn't get alarmed yet I didn't think anything was afraid of because I felt like maybe I had brushed into something that had scratched my face. But when I checked, there was nothing there. I didn't see any blood anywhere, but blood had come out of my nose. I then turned and went back, and I heard this gust of wind making a Raug sound. It's just V-O-O-G, I don't know. Raug sound passing over me. I went round where I was standing there. Then there was a valley patch of red tuftweed all rubbing together like when one feels one's way along in valleys. He says, I felt like over my whole body hair was standing on end. I became very, very frightened and thought in my heart, perhaps it's the girl. Perhaps she was buried near here. Then I ran in one burst all the way to my kinsman and said, I'm going home. I'm out. He says, I didn't even check my snares and traps. And that was the first night, right after that he had the first vision. He says, I opened my eyes and saw a single one creeping, intensely black like spiders, slowly creeping down. It came close, right on top of my bed, and my body was completely paralyzed, unable to wriggle or wake up at all. It then pressed down on my chest and crushed me. The first time I experienced the Tsog spirit crush me like this, it made me greatly startled and extremely frightened. I opened my eyes and looked, but I didn't see it truly at all. I kept seeing like an intensely cloudy shadow, and it was just pressing on my chest. So then in my heart thought, in the midst of my sleep, perhaps this new Hmong girl who took poison and died is here now. When I thought that, I became very frightened. I exerted my strength to move, and I cried out with all my strength. My mother heard and how I kept pounding and wriggling in my bedroom, so my mother came in and got me up, and I woke suddenly. I didn't sleep anymore that night. But from then on, the girl would come one night and then skip a night. One night and then skip a night. Sometimes she'd skip 3 or 4 nights. But when she came, it wouldn't make any sounds. I would wait to hear, and then my ear would make the zip sound, and I would be unable to move. It's kind of interesting because that last story was about like a whistle. But then it would change into a beautiful young woman who I would meet in my dreams. I didn't know if it was someone that I actually knew, only that it was a beautiful young woman, and who utterly satisfied me. During the time when it would climb into the bed, it would press down on me so that I was unable to move at all. Then I would feel it touch my flesh and sniff my breath. I couldn't tell that it had any smell at all. I just waited to be able to remember, and it had sex with me, like in this life, in this world. It was the one that came to crush me, and it came to have sex with me, like its strength was extremely vigorous. Then I would wake up, and my legs would be completely soaked and were sticky. He said the thing that did it to me, there where it had done it, would remain dead and paralyzed, and used its strength to press down on me. It was exceedingly heavy. He says when it was like this, it sufficed to be very frightening. I couldn't sleep in my bed anymore. So eventually he was just too ashamed to talk to his elders because of what happened with that girl. So he didn't talk to anybody about it. And this went on for quite a long time. He says, after a while, I became thin and pale. I didn't know at that time if it just was that I wasn't eating enough or I wasn't looking after myself, but I felt like I couldn't do anything. I kept being like this, and I became used to this young spirit. Not long afterward, in 1985, I married my wife, Yabu, but this spirit continued to come with me. It made me weak and tottering. I didn't have strength when I slept with my own wife. And we hadn't been married for very long. We were still pretty newly married, and my in-laws would be asking me to do chores around the house, but I couldn't do it. I was so tired. Every night, this spirit would come and snatch away half my strength. After a while, the elders noticed that something was wrong because I was so emaciated. And they asked me, do you have a sickness? What's going on with you? Therefore, I finally told my mother and father, and the two of them went to call on a kinsman to do a shamanic diagnostic ceremony. It was then that he knew I had been afflicted. And so they did a ceremony. They moved the spirit into a doll, and he took the doll far away. And for several months, this young man had relief, and nothing was wrong. But then one day, he was out doing some more stuff in the woods, hunting or trapping or something, and he accidentally came upon the doll, and he realized exactly what it was. And when it happened, it was underneath a bush somewhere. When it happened and he saw the doll, the spirit came back, and that very same night, the spirit came to him again and continued to come to him. Eventually, they moved to the United States, and for 6 years, he was free. Like, he didn't have any more visits from the spirit. And I wonder about that a little bit. And there is some mythology about, water being a barrier and spirits not being able to travel over the water. So eventually they moved to another country. It disappeared and was quiet for a long time. I was so happy. I thought that it was over. I thought that it had completely disappeared. I was feeling really good. I was sleeping really good, but eventually it found me again. And when it did, it was even worse than it had been before. He said that it's said that on our road in this life, if you're separated for a long time, when she comes back, she'll be even more severe. He says, so for like 2 or 3 straight nights, it came back and he was afflicted again. And it was the same situation where we'd come and it would have sex with him in the same dark shadow and the pressing. And there were times where it would be a shapeshifter and would pretend to be other things. Like he said, sometimes I'd look and it would just be cats. But I knew that it was that spirit. The interesting thing is he would go to friends' homes, and sometimes he would be safe at the friends' homes. It says eventually there came a time he and his wife had 4 kids. He says, I was dead. I loved them so much, and I wanted to be with them and hang out with them. They were really good kids. And he said, I made some inquiries. I studied with some people, and I got a stock of a medicinal plant. And I was able to use that, and that gave me some relief for a little while. It was a very expensive medicine, and it couldn't ever get wet. But I carried this bag with me every day, and I would only take it off to bathe. He says, at this time, my father and my mother went to my close kinsmen to tell them that I was still being afflicted by this young woman, and that the medicine was helping me very much. He said, after a while, it came to be the year 1997. I had a cousin who lived in Wisconsin. He was someone who knew how to perform shamanic rites. Oh, he was not someone who knew how to perform shamanic rites, but he did know magic spells that would help with these spirits to be reincarnated separately. So there's a note in translation. It implies that the Dab Tsog spirit themselves actually has multiple souls, one of which can be sent to reincarnate, and the other can be lost in the forest. It implies that some Dab Tsog are spirits of spited lovers who commit suicide or otherwise died, and are sort of trapped in the netherworld and need to be sent on to reincarnation, which I feel like, obviously, that's what this whole story is about. He says, I then went to ask this cousin to come recite some spells for me from the Hmong tradition and send this spirit away. We were living in America. We didn't have the bananas, which we needed to use to help keep the spirit away, which I thought was very interesting. So instead we used a shiny paper bowl and brought it as the plate. He says, we uttered a spirit calling magic spell to entice the spirit in, and then spoke to the spirit and told it to stay inside the shiny plate. He said we cooked steamed chicken, so they did like some offerings. They used some paper money to help entice the spirit to keep it to stay there. And then he hired 2 people to take the shiny plate and leave it someplace very far away, so sick people couldn't reach it and wouldn't see it anymore. After the ritual was complete, my cousin then cautioned me and told me, do not be careless. Never speak her name again. Never. If she hears it, she'll come back and find you again. So I stopped doing that, and I don't speak I don't speak her name anymore. He says, from then until now, it's been 20 years, and I haven't had another visit of her. And that's it. That's the end of the story. So I do feel like there is a kind of vampire-ishness to that.
Until he told this story, and now she is back in his life.
Well, even in the story, he refuses to say her name. So, but I wonder.
He's still talking about her. That mental link is really what it's about. So going into detail about the story could do the same thing. The shaman failed to mention that.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but maybe. I don't know. It would be interesting to do if there's ever a follow-up and see if it came back because he told the story. All right, so that's me and the sleep demons. And I did want to say I have one more argument. The Hmong people have a really rich folklore, cultural history, and spirit belief system. And they have a lot of different kinds of spirits. So when I was looking at the Cho spirits, I discovered that there were many different kinds of Cho. And there's some that are just purely just kind of press on people. There's some that will do the sexual things. And then there's others that I couldn't quite get a lot of detail on. But there is a very specific kind of vampire, a Hmong vampire. And I found a story, and then I never found it again. I don't know where it went. But in the Hmong tradition, vampires actually will eat the souls of the recently dead. And so they'll show up at funerals and they'll show up at graveyards, and they're these really pale, tall figures who don't speak a lot, or sometimes they do, and they're very charming. And they will get very, very, very close to the body and just sit there, and it looks like they're talking or saying something, some kind of goodbye to the body, but what they're really doing is eating the soul. And so there's a strong cultural belief that you never leave a recently deceased person's body alone. And you most certainly do not allow someone that you don't know to get very close to that body, because otherwise the soul will be eaten. So for me, I am open to hearing about your vampire story, and I do see the vampire-ness, especially in this most recent story where he was weak and emaciated and he was thin and he had no energy. That to me kind of smacks of vampire. And maybe he got it wrong. I don't know. But I did want to say that they do have a very clear idea of what a vampire is in the Hmong culture. So, your turn.
And also, if it didn't come back, I would say it is a vampire, because you would have to speak its name for it to come back. It's not so much the mental link as it is like you're summoning it by saying its name.
Really?
If it's a spirit, then it would come back by the description, because you're reliving the emotional state of what was happening.
Interesting. I never heard that before. So you can... I didn't know that. You can call the vampire just by saying its name?
It depends on the culture.
Huh.
Yeah.
All
so, is it... Am I going to go ahead with the vampires?
Yeah, your turn, man.
Okay. Here we go. So I've got my argument is that it's a vampire because there's many different tales in different cultures that all sort of talk about the same kind of entity. And they all discuss it in different ways. They typically started out not as the vampires that's in like Twilight or Interview with the Vampire or anything like that.
Twilight.
It's more so like what you said in this last one. So originally, the very first vampire, or the first entity to be described as a vampire, they believe it was Sekhmet, the Egyptian goddess. Let's see. So in one myth, Sekhmet's bloodlust led her to rampage and almost destroy all of humanity. To stop her, Ra and the other gods poured out a lake of beer and dyed it with red ochre to make it look like blood.
Oh.
Ra eventually used the wine and beer to pacify Sekhmet, making her believe that it was blood. She's depicted as a woman with the head of a lion, and her skin is sometimes pale green. Her name means the one who is powerful or mighty. Nickname is the one before whom evil trembles, mistress of dread, the lady of slaughter, or she who mauls.
Oh my god.
So this is kind of a backdrop to what people believe became vampires. There's also stories of it existing in Mesopotamia, which would predate this, but there's no specific examples, just lore, you know.
Yeah.
Let's go to my notes here. Okay, in Slavic vampires, they were known as non-corporeal beings, having more in common with poltergeists than anything else. The vampires wrought havoc, often as spreaders of disease in a village. They didn't create other vampires with bites. It was more so like a violent death, or if they had died prematurely of a disease. They had a lot in common with rats in this way. They were ghost-like beings that operated in the same arena as rats, is what it says here. This was from Corey Hall, is my description of vampire, the Slavic vampires. I've got a link for his article here if you want that.
Okay.
Let's see, European folklore. This is sort of thought to have traveled north from Mesopotamia and deeply seated in their culture. It's still believed today. My boss is from Romania, and she was telling me that they still have stories of it. They still have burial rituals that they perform that are altered because of this legend.
So, but you weren't able to get any details on that?
No.
God, I would love to have that. Okay.
I told her what a podcast was about, and she's like, "Oh, really? Well, we've got vampires in Romania." Like, no kidding. That would have been great to know a couple of days ago. Let's see. So vampires in European folklore, they're attributed to being undead creatures that often visit loved ones. They cause mischief or death in neighborhoods in which they inhabited while they were alive. They wore shrouds and were often described as bloated and of ruddy or dark countenance. So not at all like your modern vampire that is charismatic and beautiful.
And pale and thin and yeah.
Let's see. It says here. The story of Mercy Brown, who I'll get into in a little bit later, is thought to have been where the story for Vlad Dracul, Bram Stoker's Dracula. They think that's what inspired that. Specifically, it was Lucy from Dracula was inspired by Mercy Brown and how she accepted this entity appearing before her and eventually was getting sick, weaker, and as nights progressed, she saw the entity more and more, and then she became a vampire herself, or was becoming.
Yeah, I remember that. She was this vivacious, beautiful girl and was flirtatious and yeah.
And that is actually something that I think might have been why the husband of your first story wrote it off as, oh, well, she's just cheating on me type of thing. Like, well, she's clearly got a desire for something else, because I think there's a stigma to seeing these things constantly, as if in some way you want it.
The victim blaming. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a victim blaming in this. Turkish. There's Turkish lore around vampires. They're known as Ubir or Ober, or there's a different spelling basically of Ubir.
Oh my god, I'll ask Talat. I'll see if he has any vampire stories.
Let's see. In order to identify the vampires, often they're said that they have a fallen or slanting headstone. The plants won't grow above the grave. If the people who buried them suspected them of being a vampire, they will bury it with loose soil or sand, because they believe that the vampires have to count every grain. So they will bury the vampire, and every time the wind blows, they have to start counting again. And that keeps them occupied throughout the night.
That's cool.
When you dig up the corpse, they will be reportedly bloated in appearance, purplish, dark in color, and it's often seen with blood seeping from the mouth and nose.
Okay, but wait a minute. Hold on. I call bullshit, because any dead body, after a while, is going to end up bloated and purple and have crap coming out of the mouth. Like...
Yep.
So...
That's modern knowledge. But... And this report was from England. This was not so much the old story. This is the new stories where they gave the vampire corporeal form. So they believed if you dug up a body and it had these symptoms, that was clearly a vampire. In England, they were the ones that said, oh no, it's a physical being. And so they're the ones that said this, and it'll have its left eye open. And chewing sounds will be heard from the grave.
Ew. That's gross. So everybody prior to the English felt like a vampire was a spirit without a body?
That you could stop it by doing things to the body, but they believed that it was a spirit.
Oh, okay.
It was just tied to the body.
Okay.
And that's why you see, like, ancient graves had bricks in their mouth. They shoved bricks in their mouth to sort of get the canines out and keep it from biting people.
Good God.
They didn't believe it would actually bite them, but spiritually it would feed off of people.
Oh. Okay. I mean, all right. That's great.
Other practices included severing tendons and knees or placing poppy seeds, millet, or sand, that I just discussed, over the presumed vampire.
I've heard of the poppy seed. You know where I heard of the poppy seed thing? I said it before. X-Files. Remember there was a silly episode where Dana and Mulder...
And he's like, You just wait right there.
You need to count every single seed. You know, I've heard that about some other entity before, too. Certain fae are supposed to be like that, I think. Where if you need to buy time, you throw something numerous and small, and they will count up every last bit. I don't know if I'm imagining that, but I thought that was true of one of the fae.
The term I was thinking of, it's right here, erythromania. It's thought that vampires have erythromania, so they are obsessed with numbers and counting.
Oh.
So if you see, like you said, the small things, fine grains, you throw it, then they have to count it because they've got that OCD about them. See, in China, they would use a stack of rice because they believed the same thing. They thought the vampire had to count every grain of rice.
Dude, that's crazy. So wait a minute. Who was the one, which culture was it about the poppy and the sand?
Oh, that's Europe.
So Europe felt that, and the Chinese felt like rice. That's kind of cool that across two different cultures, they believe sort of the same thing.
Long ago when there was no internet, yeah. In India, they also used rice because it was there, easy.
Yeah.
And South America, they had tales of witches and other sort of evil, mischievous spirits or beings that they accounted to being like vampires. Now, there is the story of actually, let me talk about Strigoi a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
They were thought to be able to transform into animals. So they might appear to you as a cat, as a various rats. You will know that it's them because they'll have like their eyes might glow. You'll have a bad aura to them.
Okay.
You kind of feel that it's the same entity that's been haunting you.
So
that's immediately calls to mind the last story that you said.
With the cats.
And this is a Romanian story, Romanian version of the vampire.
So Strigoi is just a name for a type of vampire, or is Strigoi a kind of demon? I don't know why I thought Strigoi was like a demon.
They kind of break it down here, but it's kind of, so it can mean mythological microsystem of a sorcerer. So Strigoi is kind of like your old undead lich.
Okay.
Here's something interesting. In order to tell if somebody was a Strigoi, they also used the same method to tell if they were guilty of like witchcraft. They used the method of dunking.
Oh, dunking. That's the worst.
That was a method of identifying Striga.
So wait a minute. Okay, wait. So dunking, if I recall correctly, is where you tie a person up and you throw them in a body of water, and if they float, they're guilty and they're this evil entity. If they sink and drown, then they were innocent but dead. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yep. Oh, look at that. He was innocent.
He was innocent. Awesome.
Right.
Sorry
well
that you're dead.
Well.
Yeah. God, what a horrible, horrible system. Was that the only way to tell?
That's the only one that they talk about.
Oh my God.
Here's some other methods of destroying the Strigoi. Vampires varied. Staking was most commonly cited, particularly in the South Slavic cultures. So that would have been something that they would have used if they identified somebody as being a Strigoi. They would have stabbed them in the heart.
Okay.
If
they survived the dunking, they were immediately going to get stabbed in the heart?
Specifically ashwood.
Oh. Okay. Why ashwood, do you know?
Sometimes, so in Serbia, it was hawthorn. It was thought to have some magical properties, purification, that would put them down for good.
Okay. So like a
And
tree.
in Silesia, they used oak.
Okay.
So it's different. And then aspen was also used because it was believed that Christ's cross was made from oak. Was made from aspen, sorry.
Okay. All right. I can understand the logic of that one. It's such go ahead.
Another way, an anti-vampire practice upon burial, if you were afraid of your loved one becoming a vampire, you would bury them with sharp objects such as sickles, knives, or something to sort of keep them down there. Some cultures even just buried it with them loosely, thinking that it would appease the spirit.
They would bury it with a what?
Some sort of weapon.
No, but you said like a boosly? What was that you said?
In order to, so they would bury them with a sickle.
Yeah, I heard that.
Knife or something like that, loosely.
Oh, loosely. Oh, loosely. Okay.
And that would thought to appease the violent nature of the spirit. Like, oh, you have a weapon now. I don't know how that works, but...
Yeah, I feel like you're just setting the vampire up to just be armed and be... I don't understand how that's supposed to keep them from turning into a vampire. Maybe the spirit feels armed and so goes about and conducts its vengeance on the spiritual plane with those weapons instead of trying to re-inhabit the body? Well, no, because they believed that it was a spirit, right? It wasn't physical.
It wasn't a physical being. So maybe they thought that just having the iron in there with the body would sort of... Because iron itself is thought to have its own properties to keep a spirit anchored.
Yeah. Iron is very important in a lot of cultures for that reason. Brass, too, in some of the Asian cultures.
Hindus also had their own version. It's called a Vitala. It's an evil spirit that haunts cemeteries and possesses corpses. They can take many forms, such as bats or a mendicant. I don't know what that is.
We're going to have to look that up. Stand by.
It can enter dead bodies and use them to latch onto people and suck their blood. So that is one of the oldest accounts of a bloodsucker, was in actually apparently Hindu folklore. Once they're done beating, they then leave the body. They can be flesh eaters or blood drinkers. They are often depicted as reanimated corpses that rise from the dead and try to control specifically human corpses, but again, they can transform.
So a mendicant, is it Mendicant?
Yes.
That is a pauper who lives by begging.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
So they felt the vampire would appear as a beggar?
Yeah, they might appear as bat, cat, or a beggar.
I'm sorry. Okay, so I do believe that vampires are real, but to me that just sounds like creating an excuse to victimize poor beggars.
It could be.
It's a beggar.
Best
it must
to be
be
safe.
A vampire.
Best to be safe.
Let's kill it.
Exactly.
What the hell? God, that's terrible.
Something interesting about the Vitala, though, is that they are
be poor?
Defined as knowledgeable. These ones weren't just mindless killers. Oh. They did, but they were very knowledgeable at fortune telling.
Oh.
And so you could make deals with them.
Oh. That's interesting. So maybe the original, some form of Crossroads demon, kind of?
Kind of.
Huh.
But they would spread disease and whatnot, so,
Oh.
It's best not to make a deal with them because you're probably going to die.
Probably not so great then. Okay.
Japan, they had several different forms of a vampire, which I thought was pretty interesting. They've got the wailing corpses, the gaki.
Okay.
They thirst for blood, and they have a tradition of pale skin. They're hollow creatures that lack any body temperature. They have spectacular shape-shifting abilities. They can turn not only into animals, but also look like other humans. So they can impersonate, for instance, that woman's husband.
Mm-hmm. The mimic type of thing.
They can impersonate living people. There's the Hanya, usually a female. She is once a truly beautiful woman that becomes insane and possessed by a demon. She will transform into a hideous creature that drinks blood and eat children.
Well, that's...
it's unclear to me whether or not she has to be dead to become one. The Kappa, they were said to be ugly green-like children. And they can drag horses and cows into their watery homes. So they're kind of swamp vampires, I guess.
But they came after animals mostly?
Mostly.
Okay.
They will steal people's livers and hearts.
Oh, okay then.
Unless they enter a binding agreement promising not to attack people. So you can make agreements with them too.
Okay.
The Kasha, evil ghouls that are feared to be for their ferocious appetites for corpses and blood. So the Kasha, they are where Japanese cremation started to really become popular. Because if you cremate your dead, then they have nothing to feed on. They have to steal the corpse before it can be burned, kind of like that last story you said, the last depiction.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you don't leave a body alone, because they will feed off of the soul of the dead body. That's the kasha. The krapa, supposedly similar to a Malaysian vampire, the pelegana, and the Phai Krasu of Thailand. So it seems that they're all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
They've got different forms, different attributes depending on what created them or what is driving them. It's really hard to define any one specific type of vampire. For the argument of the Hmong people, I'm going to draw it back to a story about Mercy Brown.
Okay.
George Brown, his family appeared to be in good health until his son Edwin became seriously ill in 1891. He retreated to Colorado Springs in the hopes that he could recover in better climate. When he returned a year later, he was even worse. Within the same year, Edwin's sister, Mercy Lena Brown, died from tuberculosis. She was just 19 years old. And with Edwin deteriorating rapidly, his father began to grow increasingly desperate. The townspeople kept telling George Brown about an old folk tale, a superstition that claims that by some unexplained and unreasonable way, in some part of the deceased relative's body, live flesh and blood might be found, which is supposed to feed on the living who are in feeble health. So they might be getting sick, but this being is why they're dying. And basically the myth claims that when members of the same family waste away from consumption, it might be because of the deceased draining the life force from their living relatives.
Consumption, meaning tuberculosis?
Yes.
Okay.
A local newspaper wrote, Mr. Brown did not place much credence in the old-time theory and resisted their importunities until Wednesday, when the bodies of the wife and 2 daughters were exhumed, and an examination had under Harold Metcalf of Wickford.
What? So someone went against his wishes and exhumed the bodies?
Oh, he was against it, and he wanted to prove them wrong, so he went ahead with it.
Oh, I thought George Brown was saying no.
He resisted their importunities until Wednesday.
Oh, and then he just was like, you know what, to hell with it.
Then they exhumed the wife and the 2 daughters.
Okay, I'm with you.
And on that morning, a doctor with some locals exhumed the bodies of the family members who died of tuberculosis. They found skeletons in the graves of Brown's wife and eldest daughter.
Wait, what? That are not the wife, or that were the wife?
The wife and his eldest daughter, they were skeletal.
Oh, I thought you were saying that there were additional skeletons in the grave.
No.
Okay.
However, when he exhumed the 9-week-old remains of Mercy Brown, she looked startlingly normal, undecayed. Furthermore, blood was found in Mercy Brown's heart and liver. This seemed to confirm the locals' fears that Mercy Brown was some kind of vampire who had been sucking the life out of her living relatives. The doctor tried to explain to the town people that Mercy Brown's preserved state was not actually that unusual. After all, she'd been buried during the cold winter months.
Okay.
Nevertheless, they insisted on removing both her heart and liver and burning them. The ashes were then mixed in water and fed to Edwin.
Oh no!
He ate them because he believed them.
Okay. Did he get better?
So, this was something that even back then was kind of stigmatized. And the idea is, it's not listed in here. I have heard some of his depictions of what was happening. Every night he would wake up around 3 o'clock and he would see a dark figure hanging over his bed.
Okay.
Sometimes it was his eldest daughter. When it stopped being her, it was then Mercy. He would see Mercy trying to call him to come follow her. He resisted because she was dead.
Mm-hmm.
And he resisted, but he kept getting sicker and sicker. And he remembered that his son had said the same thing before his son died. So by the time he got sick, now he's seeing them. And I'm kind of burying the end here for a reason. But yeah, so you see these beings that look like your loved ones. They're haunting you because they died some violent or unnatural way. It just an untimely end.
Okay.
And so that, to me, sounds exactly like the Hmong people. Like they saw these entities appearing to them night after night, and it was causing them illness. And by seeing them and knowing their own lore, they knew that their time was drawing to an end.
Mm-hmm.
So the one that said, "I see a man, and I know I'm going to die," that sounds exactly like this type of situation. Now, Edwin, after drinking the concoction of his daughter's ashes, died. He still died.
Yeah. I mean,
At that point, he was too far gone. He died 2 months later.
ooh.
I'm not going to say that would have saved him. That sounds like a terrible idea. This is one of the few cultures that says that was a good idea. I don't think that's actually historically accurate for vampires in the first place.
I mean, I don't know. I don't, to be honest, I don't know very much about vampires from the perspective of treatment, and what you do. Like, what would the wise people and the medicine people say you have to do? I don't know how much information is out there about that. Did you find a lot?
I didn't really.
Yeah.
I only know of warding ceremonies and things to appease spirits.
Yeah.
That seems more like something you would do rather than desecrating their corpse.
Yes. In fact, in some of the things, what was I reading? Actually, it was something I was reading yesterday, a totally different book by a person who is a shaman. He said that in the Mongolian and Tibetan traditions, you actually would keep... shamans won't even go into graveyards. They won't go to funerals because it's too easy for spirits and other entities to attach to the shaman. And it's a lot of work to get rid of them. So they won't even go. Like, they won't mess with the bodies. They won't. They'll do other spirit ceremonies and ask spirits to intervene for them.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you're taking 2 steps backward. You're not doing yourself any favors by consuming the dead.
And you're further enraging the dead one, I would think.
Oh, yeah.
I don't see how that's going to help. But I guess if you're desperate and you live in a place that doesn't have shamans or medicine people or witches who would have probably taken care of that kind of thing for you.
Oh, yeah, we're talking like this was just
after,
around the time of the witch burning, so maybe right after. So there's probably not any help. Really,
nobody around who really knows what to do. Yeah.
And then I sent you a clip of one of the pictures, like...
Which one?
Vampires. I sent it to you over the chat.
I've got them, but which one? The Believe in Vampires newspaper?
Believe in Vampires, Rhode Islanders who are sure that they do exist. I thought this was just an interesting little clip that it was on the front lines.
A member of the anti-vampire party. We should look that up. Oh my god, I hope that there's a lot of information about that. The anti-vampire party.
Was something that I couldn't find in my notes here that I thought I cut out and pasted, but I'm not seeing it. In England, there was specifically a time, there was a specific era where they had a massive breakout of vampires in Europe. Let's see if I can find that. Where it was like on the news, it was on the headlines. Let's see. Oh, here's a little bit more about burying sharp objects with the vampire.
Cool.
So they would bury them with the vampire so that it might penetrate their skin and pierce the bodies once they are sufficiently bloated, while transforming it into a revenant. So that's why they did it.
Wait, what? I know this. What is a revenant?
Vengeful spirit, I believe.
Okay. Revenant. One that returns after death or a long absence. Okay, that's easy. An animated corpse. What?
Okay. I didn't read this before. One method of finding a vampire's grave is involved by leading a virgin boy through a graveyard on church grounds on a virgin stallion. The horse would supposedly balk at the grave in question, So if you know a virgin, there's a pretty peaceful way to find a vampire.
Not just a virgin boy, but also a virgin horse.
Well, that's easy enough. You just got to find one that wasn't bred.
Like a foal or something. Okay, I mean, all right, I guess. That's a weird one. I wonder how they came up with that.
Etymology, vampire, saints, vampire first appeared in northern England. Those reports. Oh, here we go. Officials noted local practice of exhuming bodies and killing vampires. These reports prepared between 1725 and 1732. They were received as widespread publicly.
I mean, say the years again?
1725, 1732.
I wonder if there was any amount of cover-up of medical institutions stealing bodies.
Oh, that did happen too.
I wonder how much of it was killing vampires and how much of it was people stealing bodies and trying to just get away with it and blame it on something else. I'm curious about that.
So that's the end of mine. I know I said that there was another name, but when I looked more into it, it's pretty widely regarded that there's no story in that one. There's no... Yeah, even her family didn't believe that she was a vampire. The only reason why she was brought up was because her mother moved the grave from the family plot to the public plot, which had more to do with zoning than any illness befalling the family.
Okay. So as far as... I thought we were going to have more of a lively debate, but I feel like...
I think we're both agreeing on the same thing, is that they're kind of still the same.
I do... The two examples that I found very much sound like either some kind of incubus, which could be argued is just a type of vampire, Incubus succubus, or is just purely a vampire, especially when you think about the last one, especially when you think about the fact that that poor lady lost 2 babies. You know, like, that would make sense to me from the idea, like, from the perspective of this thing is sucking the life force out of her. So I feel like I was feeling like I was going to be able to defend my position pretty well, but I can't. I was not able to find enough information to define the Dacho better, or to define it differently than these stories would say, that were not from the actual culture itself. So very interesting.
And as I've researched this, I do feel that the shadow entities, Hat Man, Baron Samedi, I feel like all of those are separate from the vampire.
Yes.
I think that we're both describing very much the same entities, though. Mm-hmm. What we are now talking about here is different
in today's
and one
episode.
and the same.
Yeah. I had wanted to get into more of the sleep demons around the world, their descriptions, some stories about them, and I had at least found a couple. But I think maybe it could be fun to do another episode that focuses just on different sleep demons in different cultures and what they look like and how they act. Because the Dacho in the description of the 2 stories that I read is very different from... Not very different, but is pretty different from just the goblin that sits on your chest and keeps you from breathing.
Yeah. And the other thing, too, is I feel like vampire is too broad a term.
Okay.
I feel like, of course, it was going to be, because vampire basically encompasses anything that visits you at night that causes you health issues. Mm-hmm. That seems like all-encompassing. Any kind of violent death that you then see the loved one and are therefore cursed by. It seems like throughout the world, it's usually leads to some sort of physical ailment. But that's pretty broad. Yeah. There's a lot of things that do that are then just categorized as vampire but they are different.
Right. So I think that could be fun to look into in another episode. I mean, because now, modern day, and we had talked about this a little bit, you couldn't find any modern stories of vampire attacks because you feel like there's a stigma around that. People are not going to talk about that kind of thing.
Yeah, they all just think of like Twilight or whatever, and they don't think of the same thing as it used to be. So when they see this thing and they start feeling ill and they feel drained, they don't think vampire. They think sleep paralysis.
Mm-hmm. They think stress. They think
stress.
Yeah, adrenochrome monster. Well, the other thing is we have these modern depictions of vampires now. We call them energy vampires, where they're physical human beings who are sucking the life out of you. And we call them energy vampires. So it would be interesting to kind of go into the different types of vampires and outline, see if we can kind of tease out specific types of vampires that are out there now. That could be a fun episode. All right, well, I do think that I am with you. What in the stories that I found, and I had just found them a couple days ago. It took me a long time to find them. I think that Incubus, Succubus, vampire. They definitely was sucking the energy and the life force out of these people, not just crushing them at night.
The important thing with Incubus and Succubus, though, is that it can also possess people, which is not vampire-like. Vampires, at most, are able to possess a dead body or take the form of a living person. They don't really possess people.
I hadn't heard about, I don't know if I knew that about Incubus and Succubus possessing people. That would be an interesting one to dig into, too. Okay, well, dear audience, I hope that you enjoyed this episode in learning about what happened in the 70s and 80s with the Hmong people and learning about vampires. I think that was really cool that you found an example from 1891. That's not that long ago. It feels like a long time ago. I mean, it is 130 years. But, I mean, I have patients who were born in the 20s. Like, that's not that long ago. There's still a generation of people who were just being born not too far after that. All right, well, that concludes our episode today. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about sleep demons and vampires of a variety of kinds. And join us next time as we kind of delve into the world of cryptids. That will be fun. See you later.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
I love you, Mom. It's almost 1 more hour till dinner time.
Thanks. Just in case you forgot, you need to feed me. You got an hour. Silly boy. What was I saying? Oh,